Well, thank you so much for being such a huge part of this startup space launch in the OKC Metro today. This is going to be our capstone event here to kind of close out our first launch day, but this is definitely not the end of anything. This is actually just the beginning of the usage of the platform in the OKC Metro, and we're really thankful to those of you who have gone and filled out profiles and interacted with other ecosystem members. And we wanted to shut today down with a really cool panel featuring 4 local Oklahoma funded founders, say that 3 times fast, that have all taken 4 separate paths to funding their companies. So you'll be hearing from someone that bootstrapped a company, no funding at all. Then we'll be hearing from someone who has leveraged grants. We'll hear from someone who's leveraged small business traditional bank financing, and then someone who has raised venture capital. So as you can imagine, all of those paths are very unique and present their own challenges. So I'm really excited to hear your questions for our panelists, and definitely for them to share their stories as part of our startup space here in the OKC Metro. So I'm going to hand it over to Kristen Garcia, who's on the startup space launch team here in OKC and has been a huge help to getting everything organized. And yeah, she's going to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing to get the platform up and running, and then we'll get started with the panel.
Thanks, Stacey. Again, you know, this is really one of those projects that was a collaborative effort. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about who was a part of our initial planning team, and then talk about how you can all help us moving forward. So we were really grateful that, you know, in partnership with Francis Tuttle and the Oklahoma City Greater Chamber of Commerce, Jennifer and Evan were involved in our initial funding of this app. This has been a conversation I think everybody has had at some point, is how do we have a resource that everyone is filling in so that we can know what is available in the state of Oklahoma in regards to a resource for help, funding, how do we connect, how do we reduce the loneliness of being an entrepreneur. And so, you know, our team started with those initial members, and then we brought in I2E, so Stacy, and then the Tom Love Innovation Hub that I was working with, in order to say, okay, how can we just populate this app with as many resources and events as we can? And then for this launch, the whole purpose was, now welcome, get into it, and now we want to see how you can populate it with the content and information that you have. So again, thank you to everyone who has been going into the app today. If you haven't made a profile, we would love you to make a profile, and encourage people to join Startup Space as this method of communication for starting a business, and it can be any type of business. I actually just posted something in regards to newer restaurants. We know right now during COVID, it's difficult for new restaurants to keep going, and even those that we've known and loved forever. So that could be part of the conversation. You know, how do we keep these smaller restaurants up and running, and other businesses? So thanks for joining us. I also want to thank Lily Shaw, who is part of the Startup Space team. She has been with us from the very beginning, and helping us learn how to use the app, getting us really coordinated. You know, we've collaborated very well, but we really needed someone to say, like, this step, this step, this step. So that's one of those values we get out of having this app, is now we have a technical team, and we have support in how to create it and keep it going. We also have David, who will be one of our speakers, so you'll get to know more about him, but he is the CEO and founder of Startup Space. And so, you know, it's been great to hear about what other communities are doing and how we can mimic what they're doing, or in some cases, what are we doing that's specific to Oklahoma City that we really need to focus on. And their team has been so helpful, and, you know, sharing features with us, training us, listening to our concerns. So if you're using the app a lot, you'll probably run across a glitch or two, and that's perfect, because we should be finding those with a new company. We would all want that of our own businesses. So please continue that communication with Startup Space if you have any concerns. Then in regards to the rest of the session, and I'll hand it off after that, we really figured like Stacey said, let's end this with funding. That is the number one question I think most of us in the service provider space get is, well, I need money. And if it were that easy, we would be handing it out. But so we wanted to go to those of you who have actually gone through various funding processes to hear your stories, the good, the bad, the ugly. What would you share with other people? Because we want more businesses. You know, Stitch Crew has that t-shirt that says, you know, more startups, Oklahoma. And so we want that. And it's important we all work together in that. So as mentioned, you're going to hear 4 different avenues of funding. Some of these individuals have received multiple funding paths, but we want them to speak directly to the 4 that we've assigned to them. And I'm going to list all of our speakers in the chat so that you have their information just straight off the bat. And they're all going to tell you a little bit about what their company is, a little bit about their funding and some of the things that they would like to recommend and reference in regards to their funding method. And then after each person has been able to speak, we're then going to do a general Q&A because we want your questions as to what are the things that you've wanted to know about these various methods of funding. So with that, I am now going to pass it off to Evan for our bootstrapping story.
Not it.
Not
Thanks,
it.
Kristen. Well, I've got the pleasure of introducing David, who founded this platform that we've gathered together today, kind of in service of. And David has actually bootstrapped the Startup Space platform. And for those of you who weren't on the call at the very beginning of the day to listen to David present at 1 Million Cups, Startup Space is in 150 cities across 62 countries. So it's no small feat to have bootstrapped a company that has that sort of global reach and provides, you know, the services that it does to entrepreneurs and startup communities around the world. So David, I don't know how much you really want to speak about the company itself, but I'm kind of interested to get into the questions about bootstrapping. I feel like it's kind of the most onerous one of the 4 that we're talking about today, but I'll let you give a little bit of a background before I start peppering you with questions about what Startup Space is.
Perfect. Thank you, Evan. And it's been such an amazing day today. Thank you all for your hard work. It's one thing to plan it out, but to have executed at this level, I am just so impressed with the team. And I didn't even wait for the day to end. I've already been sharing it with the rest of the demo calls and clients calls I've had today, already telling them about how we're going to have to replicate the energy that you all brought. And so I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. I will just give you a very broad overview of Startup Space and where we came from. In 2018, I quit my job working at Nielsen Company, which is a market research firm. You've probably all heard of it from the television ratings for American Idol saying 52 million people watched it, or you paid $1 million for a 30-second ad. All of that comes from the measurement of the platform, and that's what kind of sets the rates for different advertisements, etc. I worked there for 7 years, was able to build a lot of social capital, intellectual capital, also financial capital, and I quit my job in June of 2018 to start this platform. The idea behind it, in a very simple way, was to help connect people to resources in their community. And I'll give you a quick pitch as to why I decided to go this route. Early on, when I first quit my job, there was the option of going after venture funding, and that's what we've all seen in Shark Tank. That's what we think starting a business is about. And so I quit my job and I said, I'm going to prototype this product. I'm going to come up with what this product is and how to sell it. And then I'm going to go to a VC and I'm going to present this. And as soon as we launched this, we had a revenue plan. And then I had a question that I had to answer, which was, I can either spend the next 18 months raising capital, or I can spend the next 18 months finding a client. And they're both equally painful. But the reason I decided to bootstrap was, even after I get the funding, I still have to go find the client. And that money that I get is not mine. I have to still return it by getting revenue. So I said, I'm going to bite the bullet because I'll have to still bite the bullet down the road. And there's only two things that are really important. And out of those two things, actually, one is more important than the other. There's time and money. Those are the two valuable things that we have, because I've heard entrepreneurs who come to me and say, I've been doing this for 5 years and I'm still trying to make it. And that scares me. It doesn't matter whether that product is relevant in 5 years or not. You've spent 5 years of runway building this. At some point, you're just going to get burnt out. It's just, it's very few and far between. Shark Tank is rare. Somebody making it after 5 years is even rarer because you've spent all the time. So money is the most important thing. And I said, I need to very quickly find out what the way forward is. So I'm going to spend my time selling. And the second was, if I sell, I get to keep my money. If I raise money, I got to give it back. So I said, if I'm going to go through the pain, I want to keep that money. So that was the thought process behind going with the bootstrap route. And Evan, stop me if you want me to share or you want to ask questions.
I do have one question. It may be too invasive, but I'm going to go ahead and ask it anyways. So I think people think, well, I've got to have, this really cush 6-figure job, and then I get to quit that job and, go do something with my savings. But it's probably not always that glamorous. So how did you finance it? Was it maxing out all the credit cards you could apply for? Was it a second mortgage on your house? Was it a rich uncle passing away? Like, what did that look like? Or aunt? I don't know.
It was a little bit of some of it and not a lot of all of it, actually, because if you want to start a business, you need to have money. In most cases, 90% of the cases, if you want to start business, you have to have money. And that's like the harsh truth, right? Like you need to have some money. And the example I give people about venture capital is, if I give you money, I want to move in with you because the only reason I'm giving you money is I want more of my money. There is no altruistic motive. And if there is, I'm sure, that's great. Like if you can find an investor who's just giving away money for free, that's great. But every investor, the reason they have that investor title, even if they are not making money, is because they want to make money, right? Like they might not make money because they might make bad choices, but they're giving you with the hope that they get more of it. So if I wanted to have a product that I could like really build on my own, I needed to have my own money, not somebody else's money. And so what I did is I had a 6-figure job, but that's not how I, invested the money, because before I could actually, if I'd spent like a few more years, I could have gotten a lot of money out of my company. But instead I quit and I took my savings, which is really I think the most bootstrappers do. I actually went into my 401k and I drew down my 401k. I'd been building it for 7 years. It was a pretty sizable amount. I drew it down and I broke it out into 2 chunks. So the first thing I did, I didn't take the whole thing down. I took the first part of it as a loan. So your 401k, you're allowed to take it as a loan without a penalty. So I took it as a loan and I created a budget. And the budget was basically how much will it cost me to create a prototype of my product, and plus how much will it cost me to go sell it to my first customer. And I created and to this day, I don't have a business plan. So I'm not saying any of you should create a business plan. And I might be wrong, but don't do it. What I'm talking about is just a roadmap. So I said, how many months will it take me to get there? Let's say 4 months. And I said, okay, I need $3,000 times 4 months, right? So I said $12,000. And I'm going to give me like a $3,000 cushion for any surprises. And that's it. And I told every 30 days, and I told my wife to hold me accountable, every 30 days, I need to have a milestone that ends. And I told myself, if we don't do any of these things in the 4-month period, I'll go back and find a job. So there was like a hard commitment to my family that, if I don't hit these milestones, I'm going back to find a job. And we actually hit every single milestone. So we said, and that's part of like being realistic. My prototype was, I quit my job June 1st. July 17th, the first version of the app was in the App Store. And so people think, that founders are in their garages, tinkering in their garages. What I actually said was, if I build a Cadillac, nobody might want that Cadillac. However, if I build a radio flyer, find 2 people that want the radio flyer, put them in it, I can always go back and add headlights or tail lights. Or if they say, I want a bigger radio flyer, I can move them to a bigger radio flyer. I've only spent money on a radio flyer. So if nobody wants it, I'll leave it in the garage. But if you build a Cadillac, now you have all of this pressure to go sell that Cadillac. And what if nobody wants it? So so it took $3,000 and said $3,000 is all I'm going to spend on a prototype. So from June 1st to July 17th, all I did was spend money on that spent $3,000, built the prototype, put it in the app store, I went to all my friends and family and said, from my previous business, I learned friends and family revenue is not revenue. So, but I went to them and said, can you help me with a launch event? So I went to my local college, called them. They were all excited. Sure, we'll do a launch event. So we actually got the local college to host us. And we had like 50 people in the room. And literally we did a launch event with those 50 people. And I got 50 downloads that day for my app. And then it started from there.
Well, the insurance policy on a Cadillac is a lot more than it is for a radio flyer. So I think you made the smart move. Since we already ran out of time and you gave a lot of really great information, I think one final question that may help those in the audience kind of understand your point of view now. So if you had to do it all over again, would you fund the same way, or would you solicit outside investment? What would that look like?
No, I would do it the same way. And really, honestly, the biggest thing here that I didn't talk about is that I got really lucky, right? Like you can do all of the same things and still not make it. So if I got it again, I would just say, let me just have the same amount of luck and I'll be okay.
No, that's fair. Thank you for being so candid and sharing that bit of your journey. And I would encourage anybody that has follow-on questions, we only got to ask 3, but drop them in the chat, and maybe if we get lucky, David will answer them for us, later on in the program. So I will go ahead and hand it off to whoever is next. I don't remember. Is it Stacy?
That's me.
Perfect.
Yeah, I was going to say not it like you, but I'm here. Okay, great. Well, it's really my pleasure to introduce Dr. Elaine Hamm. She's a personal friend and mentor of mine and office mate as well. So I've had the pleasure of seeing her work with several businesses. She's currently the CEO of Ascend Bioventures, but she's also the CEO of The Study, which will be the business that she's talking about today. It's a wine bar in Oklahoma City's downtown Film Row. She wears a lot of hats, and I could tell you she has a funding story for each of these categories, but I'm really excited to hear about how she chose this path for this particular venture. Another interesting thing about The Study is that it was set to open March of 2020. So she's probably had some other entrepreneurial adventures with related to COVID and opening a new customer-dependent business. So Elaine, I will let you take it from here and then pop in with some questions at the end.
Great, thanks, Stacy. Yeah, so basically my job description is I'm in the drug and alcohol business. So day job drug, and that's where I pursue the traditional type of funding of venture capital funding and maybe some grant funding, but my night job required a little bit of more creative funding because there's just not a lot of venture capital funding for the sort of wine and restaurant business. And the other piece of it was that, there's definitely no grant funding for that either. I tried my hardest to find grant funding because I thought, that's a good value proposition of bringing wine to the masses. But we really we pursued a combination. So we started out looking at a private investor. So we did a part private placement memo and part SBA loan. To be honest, it was really a long process to raise funds from individuals, and that prompted us to finish out the rest of our round with an SBA loan. And having that kind of hybrid helped us a great deal. The private placement memo and the investors from that helped serve as the collateral and the 20% down payment that the SBA required. And having the SBA involved kind of showed our investors that we had skin in the game as well. One of the requirements with any SBA loan is that you have to provide collateral, which is this lovely house that's around me right now. So, which is a little scary, to be honest. I frankly have used other people's money for all of my other companies. So it was different to kind of really put my money where my mouth was, or where my wine glass is. And so we did a combination. The SBA process is as long and painful as any other kind of fundraising process, just a little bit different in that the sense that as long as you have all your ducks in a row and you have a good credit score and you have a good plan and a good team, and the 20% down, I knew I was going to get funding. Whereas when you work with trying to get angel investment and venture capital, you never know if it's actually going to happen. So with the SBA, it was a little bit more, we knew. So are there other questions?
Great. So how did you go about finding the private investors that were going to participate alongside the loan?
I found a mentor in the restaurant industry that had done the same thing and kind of made him an advisor for our company. And he introduced us to a few folks. And then frankly, I thought, who would want to invest in a restaurant or a bar? Because the return on investment is incredibly low compared to, the 20x that I pitched from a drug development perspective. But I was surprised that people that want to invest in a wine bar are looking to own something, are looking to go to their bar that they have a piece of. And so it's the friends and family route. So friends and family that were interested, and some of the previous investors of our restaurant advisor also invested in us as well. And it's a little bit different. You have to promise them, not all of them are accredited, so that's why it's a private placement memo. You have to really prove to the SEC, like they understand the risk, even though they're not accredited. And you also kind of have to promise them a little bit of different things. Like I can't promise someone can have the drug that I'm developing if they invest in me, but they sure have a monthly credit that they can enjoy at the wine bar for those invested in the wine bar. So it was a little cobbled together, and it's a long process. So that's why I was like, let's go the SBA route. And we got introduced to that route because I made my entire team go to the Metro Tech and take their business class. So that connected us with the Community Action Center, which also can participate in SBA type grants. They also have equipment loan grants. And that funneled us to the Citizens Bank of Edmond that really helped us with our SBA.
Great. So I know that these times get tight on the panel, so I just want to ask one more question and we can go to the next speaker. But can you tell us a little bit about how you have communicated with both your lender and your investors in light of COVID, given that your business was immediately affected?
Yeah. And that's where really having a bank helped us quite a bit. We obviously are a lot more ingratiated to them because at the end of the day, if the wine bar fails due to COVID, we still have to pay the loan. However, keeping them in the loop and having them on our side during this process has been incredibly helpful. They were one of the first people we called and told them what we were going through and what we needed to do. And that's where having a good relationship with both your investors and your bank is really, really important. Not communicating with either investors or the bank is a terrible idea because they were there for us. They extended our line of credit. It helped us with the PPP process because we were already with the SBA. So that helped sort of smooth that process out, even though that was not our intent at the beginning. I treated the bank just like I treat any investors. I provide quarterly reports, monthly updates. I give them every single wart possible so that they understand what we're struggling with. And they're very, very helpful. And I highly recommend, if you're looking to go the SBA route, make sure that you pick a bank that really understands the SBA process. Don't just pick a bank that you've always gone to. You have to know how many SBA loans that they actually do, and make sure that this is something that they do all the time. So that's a really important piece too. So
yeah, that's awesome advice, Elaine. And if anyone has any other questions for Elaine, you can drop them in the chat. We're also going to open it up to audience Q&A at the end of the panel. So thank you so much, Elaine. Yeah. And I'm going to hand it over to Kristen, who's going to introduce Greg.
Great. And you can always come join me at the wine bar and ask me questions, and I'll pour you a glass and tell you the other woes.
The other woes. I love that. And I think that's probably the biggest thing for everybody, right? Like there's no perfect way, and not every way is going to offer you the best solution. So that makes a whole lot of sense. I have the pleasure of introducing Greg Hallman next in regards to grant funding. I've actually known Greg since college at OU, so we've been friends for a long time. He started Ocupath in early 2018 with the goal of helping learners find their path in life using virtual reality. So prior to that, he's worked in higher education, working with a lot of first-generation college students, and he was one as well. He was fortunate to receive the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Scholarship, and he's married to Nancy and has 3 children. So he has worked in partnership with the Oklahoma Catalyst Group through the Innovation Hub to receive his SBIR funding, and has gone through a number of different phases. So Greg, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Kristen. Can you hear me pretty well? Okay,
yes,
good.
we can hear you.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our call today. And it's a pleasure for me to be on the call and to be able to talk about the SBIR program. The first things first, SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. And it is a grant program through the US government. And in a nutshell, I can say in a few words that if the US government could be an angel investor in your company, that's what SBIR is. It's the government becoming an angel investor and helping small business. So they define small business as any business with 500 employees or less, or I should say less than 500 employees. And also this particular program is only focused on tech-related programs, right? So if you have the goal of starting a barbershop, chances are you're not going to get SBIR funding. But if you have a new product that's going to help barbers and it's tech-related, there is a chance that maybe you could get some government funding from that. It's not quite as straightforward as talking to an angel investor, because another twist, I guess I could say, on it is that it's the government becoming an angel investor in your company, but at the same time you have to apply, so it's very competitive, and you also have to quote unquote audition for the funding. And what I mean by audition is, so this SBIR funding, it's also tied to what are called topics, but I would also call them problems that need to be solved using technology. And some of them are hypothetical problems that the government is trying to solve, and some of them are based on real problems that the government is having that they hope technology can fix. But so in essence, it's this funding that the government is willing to give to your small business if you can help them to solve this problem, which may or may not be an actual problem. It's more, that's why I say it's more like an audition, right, on how you would use this funding. I should also explain that this funding comes from Congress. So Congress has mandated all federal agencies, some of which include, of course, the Department of Defense, the National Institute of Health, the U.S. Department of Education, any of these federal agencies, the FAA, the FDA, Congress requires that these agencies set aside 5% of their annual budget to help grow small business in the United States. And again, it has to be tech-related small business. So if you can imagine the Department of Defense, obviously we know every year they have a very large budget. And 5% of that budget has to go, by way of this mandate by Congress, it has to go to help invest in small businesses. So if you go back in time to early 2018, I never knew that SBIR even existed. And it took me several months to even spell SBIR correctly. So I didn't have any background in this type of funding at all. But it spoke to me. It was very similar to the process you might go through when you're applying for a scholarship. When you apply for a scholarship, you have to write these long essays, and you're submitting several pages of writing, and that's in essence what it's like when you're applying for an SBIR grant. And I was very fortunate to have help in doing so, because OK Catalyst, and specifically Tom Wavering and his team, which Kristen was a part of that team too, they held my hand throughout the entire process. Like I said, to go from not knowing anything about this program to actually submitting a proposal, very competitive. I didn't even think I was going to get chosen. And my very first attempt, we got a grant for $150,000 in exchange for what can basically be called a white paper, a feasibility study. You write a proposal and you say, if you give me this funding, this is what I would do with it. Phase one, this is what I would do if you were to give me a phase two. And a phase two, this is what I would do if you were to give me an actual full-fledged government contract. So long story short, we got a Navy SBIR phase one award in 2018. Again, it's a feasibility study to see how virtual reality can be used in the classroom, specifically with training Navy pilots in a classroom about physics. And then our second award this time was through the Air Force, and we got it in 2019. It started off with a $50,000 phase one award. Again, we wrote a feasibility study how we would use VR for their training. Fortunately, they liked the idea. They gave us a phase two to actually produce a demo. We're in phase two right now, and we got $1 million for that. $1 million to take what was in the feasibility study and actually create a prototype. So we're in that phase now, and if all goes well, if they like the prototype, then they say, okay, you convinced us at phase one, we gave you a phase two, we're still convinced, we now want to give you a phase three, which is in essence becoming a full-fledged government contractor, sell us your product. So, it's a very, very lucrative program. I would definitely recommend it if you have.
Oh, Greg, I think you hit mute on accident. Hold on, he's talking still. Greg.
Sorry,
Oh,
I went on mute, right? So it's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it. And I thought, like I said, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even have a tech background. And now we have these three big awards that we've gotten through SBIR. And I couldn't have done it without OK Catalyst. And I'm more than happy to help anybody on the call with any knowledge that I know of. And I really recommend that you go through OK Catalyst through the University of Oklahoma too, if you're interested in SBIR funding.
So Greg, one of the questions I have, which I think this was part of my learning of SBIR, since your company, Ocupath, is not to make VR training for the Navy, it's to do it for a whole suite of things. How did taking this funding and working on this project how did it impact your actual business of Ocupath?
So the way that it's helped our business is that, and this is part of the goals of SBIR, is what they call commercialization. So to put it in layman's terms or in simple terms, the government says, we'll pay you to pretend that you're a government contractor and pretend to fix this problem that we have in the DoD, we'll say. And at the same time, though, whatever it is whatever solution or whatever product that you create to solve this problem, make sure that it also is a solution that can be used out in the real world, out with a private customer in the general public, right? So what we're doing for the Air Force, for example, real quick, what we're doing for the Air Force is we're helping them to create a digital twin of an aircraft called the CV-22, the Osprey, half helicopter, half plane. And the problem that the Air Force has, which in this case is an actual problem, not just a hypothetical problem, an actual problem that the Air Force has with this particular aircraft is that when they go to train 20-year-old trainees and 21-year-old aircraft mechanics, they want to train them on the CV-22, but number one, it's not always available for training purposes only. And also when it is available for training purposes only, there's a risk that this inexperienced mechanic will break a very expensive piece of equipment, right? So we've created the digital twin version of that aircraft. So whenever you work on the aircraft and you're learning how it works and how to fix it, how to maintain it, and if you break it, you push a button and it's no longer broken, right? It's much better and much safer to break an aircraft in VR than it is in real life. Well, you take that scenario, and that could also apply to anybody outside of the Air Force, whether it's oil drill operators. It's very risky and it's very dangerous if you're a roughneck on an oil rig, on an oil well. You can die, and if you're a young person, just getting started in the field, you want to get as much experience as you can, but you also have to stay safe. Well, you can do it in VR, and it's much safer. You can train in VR, and it's much cheaper. If you have this big piece of equipment, maybe it's a construction company, maybe it's a printing company, whatever kind of commercial company you could think of out there, if they have a large piece of equipment that's expensive and they want to train people on it, but they don't want to risk breaking it or add wear and tear to it, it can be done in VR. So the government giving us this money to create this prototype has also opened up doors for other customers to say, hey, actually, we could use that too. And since you've already worked for the Air Force and you've got some notoriety there and you've already got a product we can use, modify it for us and we'll pay you.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg. So I want to, in the interest of time, pass it on to Jennifer. But again, just like everyone else has mentioned, type any questions in the chat that you might have. And I provided the general sbir.gov link for everyone if you'd like to learn more about it specifically from the overview. But please connect with Greg or myself if you have questions about it. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all. Well, I have the privilege of introducing one of my absolute favorite entrepreneurs out there. And Allison Conti with Watkins-Conti Products is here to talk to us a little bit about the venture capital funding route. And for those of you who've never met her, Allison is the absolute master of making things happen. And so hearing from her today, one, talking about venture capital, but then being a female in venture capital, and then what she's been able to do in identifying a need, figuring out a solution, and now literally on her way to literally helping tens of millions of women. I mean, this is just an awesome story here from Oklahoma. So Allison, tell us a little bit about Watkins-Conti and then your fund journey through venture capital.
Well, that makes me really nervous, that introduction. That's really, really kind. Thank you so much. I actually am going to share my screen because I don't want to trail off. I tend to do that. So I'm just going to tell you guys kind of from the beginning. Can y'all see? Okay, so Watkins-Conti Products is the company that I am with, and we are a disruptive platform women's healthcare company, and we are solving vastly unmet needs in women's healthcare and normalizing stigmas with the intention of improving the consumer experience overall. I am the founder and CEO, and based from a personal need that I had, I've developed a solution for stress incontinence, which is involuntary urine leakage. It is a very embarrassing, taboo subject. But I've been able to work together with a team of people and validate the concept in a feasibility study. We have a full global intellectual property portfolio that includes a suite of spinoffs on in addition to just the Yoni Fit, which is the incontinence product, really building this out to be a platform women's healthcare company. And to date, we've raised $3.5 million. So fundraising, that's what we're talking about here. With this project, I knew that, there's potential for me to have to go raise $20 million, right, to get this done. And so from the very beginning, from the get-go, that's kind of how I thought about it. So when I formed the company, which was with my savings, you have to have something, right? So when I formed the company, we built it. It made sense for us to do it as a Delaware C Corp. There's some governance around that. We have a board of directors and things of that nature. And also, as I started talking to people to fund this project, they kind of looked at me like, well, that's cute. You're a mom and you have this idea and you filed a patent on it, but who's going to run this company? And so very quickly, I recognized that I really needed to build a robust team. And the way that the company was set up, I was able to distribute restricted stock to, FDA experts, regulatory experts, quality managers, doctors. We needed all these people to help us actually catapult this forward, but we didn't have any money. So that's been really phenomenal because now everybody's got skin in the game and everybody wants for this to go through all the way to the finish line. So that's been great. And then I would say, whenever you're thinking about talking to a VC group, you have to take a real methodical approach there with your timeline and your valuation. And you've got to plan it in a way where, there's going to be an inflection point, right, with your next fundraise. And so having these team members surrounding the project has just been incredibly helpful in building that out and communicating it clearly to investors in a way that we don't have to budge on valuation, because that's like what everybody thinks about the VC route is that they're just going to crush you on valuation. And truly, I mean, you have to take an extremely methodical approach to it in order to not be crushed. And so I'm going to have, this next slide is kind of going to show you how we did it. We started with, bootstrapping, friends and family, and then the VC route. But as you approach these investors, recognize, that it's not like you have a contractual obligation to them. So not all money is good money, and make sure that your business styles are complementary and that everybody involved is completely transparent with all of it. So this is kind of how I have worked out, to explain to everybody where we started. So first we raised, the first bootstrap and friends and family round of 2 million, but we had clear valuation inflection points. So the first 250,000 was on a convertible note. We completed feasibility, proving that this worked. We raised the next round of funding, based on having that. We ended up getting our patents granted. So we were then again able to, create that value inflection point and raise money at a higher valuation. And from what I've learned working with, VC groups, institutional investors, having an outline and a plan extremely far in advance like this is crucial and critical, and thinking of every single possible delay, every single thing that's going to go wrong, which is like, it's terrible to think worst case scenario, but you have to do it, right? So, that's kind of how we've done it. Thankfully, another sort of tip that I've been talking to people about that I feel like with COVID has been amazing for us is we had some warrants that we issued to our earliest stage investors, and for them to protect their investment and for us to continue going with these unexpected things. It's been really helpful to have those in place as well. And now we are positioning to, in the next 12 months, raise probably a $10 million Series A, unless we get acquired. So all of the stars, the arrows are valuation inflection points, and the stars are opportunities for an exit. And we'll just continue to stay in front of everybody. But a recap on just raising money, think long-term from the very beginning. Not all money is good money. Make sure that you are strategically aligning yourself with advisors and investors that are going to catapult you forward. And doing that, you also have to be teachable, right? You have to be willing to listen to them and know that you don't know everything, and transparent with your challenges, because that's really what they're for. VC groups and institutional investors and strategic partners, they want to join forces and help you, to make everybody's, 20 times return on their investment, right? So thank you so much for your time. I hope that was helpful. And there's my email and telephone number. And does anyone have any questions? I get so nervous.
Great job. Okay, Allison, I'm going to address, and sorry guys for you on the call, because Allison showed a picture that I want to address the elephant in the room. And I hate to do this, but being a female seeking venture capital, what's the one piece of advice you would give to other women looking to seek venture capital?
Yeah, so I would say, so our product is a vaginal insert, right? So it adds another layer to speaking to men in the room. So one thing that I would say is, for me, like if I could tell myself what not to do, it would be don't giggle whenever you get uncomfortable talking about, your valuation, what you're doing, like whenever you get insecure or you're talking about a vaginal insert to a room full of men. I have learned over time that giggling or showing those little insecurities and not just being firm in where I am and what the value of the company is and what their return is going to be, and that's, I think, kind of the advice is just make a plan and stick with it and don't apologize for it.
That is awesome advice. I'm going to toss it back to Kristen and Stacy. If you have any questions for any of the 4 founders, please drop them in the chat or feel free to kind of like raise your hand or unmute yourself. We've got a couple more minutes before we want to wrap up. So now is your opportunity to get the next prying question addressed.
Allison, so how many venture capital groups did you pitch before you landed on the one that wanted to seal the deal?
You know, we got several offers. So I would say we pitched hundreds. I mean, I got in front of hundreds of people. And, you know, you're going to get in front of hundreds of people before you get any hit. And, you know, that's why I was saying, you know, it's so important to really think about who you're doing business with, because not all money is good money. And whenever you have been out there, like, getting after it and asking hundreds of people, and it's your passion project, it's your baby, you've got a family to provide for, like, I'm a single mom, you know, like, this is our life, and somebody offers you money, you're like, oh my gosh, they want me. You know, and so it's been really amazing to have, like I said, again, a team of people really taking a bird's eye view look at this, because I'm very passionate about this. I'm very, very optimistic. You've got to have people surrounding you that are going to give you honest, candid information, whether you want to hear it or not. It's the truth. And that's sort of how we've sorted through different term sheets throughout the different phases of the company. And we just kind of learned that, you know, the earliest money from the VC groups, I probably wouldn't even be working. I wouldn't have I'd have a job somewhere else, or I would be on another project probably. So, you know, just taking a look at your long-term plan and sticking with what, you know, you want to do for your family and for yourself, I think is very important. Did that answer your question?
Okay.
Follow-up question for everybody that all four of our panelists, this may apply to some more than others, but what's the worst piece of advice that you've received when determining, you know, how am I going to fund my business?
I mean, I've told lots of people have told me that this is too ambitious. I'm not a doctor, you know, how am I going to do this? You know, you cannot do this. I've had people tell me you cannot do this. I've had people tell me that women will not like my product. You know, I mean, and so it's just, that's been terrible advice. But it's also been like fuel, right? I'm like, oh yeah, let's do this. You know, so.
Elaine, what about you?
I can't think of anything that was bad advice. And I've definitely had people that have given me term sheets and they were like, this is the best deal that you're ever going to get. And it's not always the best deal you're ever going to get. So, I mean, I think that's come along, but I don't think I've gotten really terrible advice. So if I did, I probably ignored it. I mean, honestly.
That's true.
Clearly.
Greg, did you get any bad advice along the way?
Yeah, it's not so much bad advice, but, you know, it's just people trying to, well, I don't think they do it on purpose, but people try to bring you down to earth, or they try to talk sense into you, right? How could you quit your job to start a company? Like, aren't you scared? Or for example, in my particular scenario, my version of no woman's going to like your product is, why would anybody want to use VR for training? Can't they just do it training in real life? Like, what's the big deal with VR? Or VR is not going to go anywhere. VR is just a fad. You know, people that, you know, usually friends and family who don't do this for a living every day, who they're just trying to help you by saying, don't make a mistake. You're about to go down this path and waste lots of time and money, and you're going to have nothing to show for it. But, you know, thankfully, you know, it's paid off, you know, it's paid off.
I had the opposite problem. I've had people constantly trying to make equity. And I keep saying, you know, if you go the equity route, you should just go the whole route, because there's lots of paperwork, there's lots of things you got to do. But to give 1% here, 1% there, etc., I was like, no, I'm either going that route or I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be managing a 0.25% across 5 different people, people who've tried to, you know, get employed and get equity, or people who try to do equity for getting me contracts or getting me sales, etc. And I've just like shut it always down and said, if I do it, I do it, or I'm not going to have to say, at a point when there's an exit, say, let me just hold that thought. Let me ask those 50 other people that have 0.25% what they think of it. So there's also that aspect to raising money where there'll be other ways in which people are trying to, get a piece of the company.
I have a question for each of you as well. And how would you say your level of risk or your level of trusting other people impacted the choice you made and why you went that funding route?
Nothing about my personality says I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, mine went through executive coaching. She was like, I can't believe you're in startups because I'm so risk adverse. And so doing the SBA loan was actually incredibly scary because it was the first time I had to put my own collateral up. So, I mean, I've been taking VC money and angel investment money for the past decade and grant money too. And then now it was putting my money where my mouth was. And that was a little scary. So, yeah, especially when it was a consumer-based product, that was a little bit, because then you're really relying on whether people like what you have. I've been in drug development. I mean, if you find a cure, that's your value proposition. That's an easier value proposition, but something that's very driven by people and their opinions, that's also very scary. So.
Kristen, I wanted to tell you, to answer your question by saying that, a lot of times you just have to trust yourself because, yeah, there's going to be lots of risk. And we could drive ourselves crazy thinking about even the risks involved with walking down the street, right? There's a lot of risk when we drive a vehicle, but you just at some point you stop being afraid and you jump in the water and you trust yourself. You know that you can count on at least yourself. You know that what you're capable of. You believe in yourself enough that you're almost betting on yourself, and you're always going to bet high when it's yourself most of the time. And also what helped me to take the leap of faith, obviously the support of my wife. When I had no money coming in, my wife was paying for, all of our expenses, so I leaned on her for almost a year. And thankfully I had her support. I also had the support of like-minded entrepreneurs through the Oklahoma City Thunder Launchpad and Stitch Crew. So Erica and Chris Lucas through the Stitch Crew, just helped me out tremendously, and the other people in my batch. Had it not been for the Stitch Crew and an accelerator, I wouldn't have found out about the SBIR program and OK Catalyst. So, being with other people that are like-minded and going through the same things as you, your support group helps as well.
Awesome. I think that was a great way to end this. It is 4:57. So join me in thanking each of the entrepreneurs that shared their journey today. Great stories. We greatly appreciate you and your willingness to give back to the entrepreneurial community. So as somebody stated earlier, this was actually just the start, not the end. So we invite you to get on startupspace.app, create your profile, and help us really start collaborating and further building a community here in the Oklahoma City area. We've got great things ahead for us. One of the things that we did mention earlier is we were doing a scavenger hunt all day. We have 4 prizes and only one of our winners is actually on this call. So give me a hand in congratulating Heather Thompson. She finished 2nd place. And so Heather, you will be getting a 60-minute professional coaching session by Kristen Garcia, and then also a $25 gift card to the Plenty Mercantile. And we'll get that to you through email and get you hooked up with Kristen. And then there are other scavenger hunt winners. We will notify them by email, but everybody go have a great evening. And we look forward to seeing you on our Launch OKC Metro Hub on Startup Space. So thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.